Welcome everybody to the April version of the Lynx Thought Leadership Lunch and Learn series. Really excited to have two experts in mining sustainability with us today, Sabrina Diaz from SOOP Strategies and Ashley Smith-Roberts from Levin Sources. These are monthly lunch and learns that we do to give both the market and our stakeholders a little bit more information about what Lynx does, how our platform helps companies, and in the case of today's lunch and learn, some of the broader implications for reporting, for diligence, and data capture at the mine site itself. So I'm Trevor Jones. I'm the CEO of Lynx Global Intelligence here in Denver, Colorado. We make a SaaS platform that helps typically junior exploration stage mining companies capture data at the mine site. This is really important because traditionally this data has been captured in spreadsheets and notebooks. We give companies a tool that works offline at the mine site to go ahead and capture data event categories and a number of other metrics. So last time, about a month ago, we had some of our clients on the webinar. We had a great conversation with Chris Karen, the Chief Geological Technician of SPC Nickel. Chris was talking a lot about how he uses the platform to capture data in the field, and kind of what he does with that data in terms of communicating with his team using the Lynx platform. Today, we're going to have a bit of a broader conversation with both Sabrina and Ashley about how we can further use that data to go ahead and create things like reports, to go ahead and communicate with external stakeholders, mitigate risk, and then engage with this global ESG compliance regime that we have coming down the pike, and they can both kind of speak to that. I know we're all smiling because it is fun for the whole family, as they say, in terms of the breadth and volume of both audit and reporting and performance standards as well. So I actually have asked both Ashley and Sabrina to give their own backgrounds. I've also posted their bios on the Eventbrite event page. So if anybody wants to click into their respective bios on their websites for their respective organizations, you can feel free to do that. But Sabrina, I might have you start, if you're willing, to just talk about kind of your experience, what SOOP does now, your company, the folks you work with, and how you're helping mining companies.
Sure. Thank you, Trevor, for the intro and for having me join the call today. My background in mining is as an engineer, which is how I started out in the industry. Quickly came to understand there's a lot of benefits that the industry can bring, particularly in economic shared benefits, social benefits, environmental mitigation plans, and so forth. So I sort of pivoted my career that way. And did a master's in environmental studies with a university in Canada, York University. So ever since, I've been in the industry now almost 25 years. Much of that is dedicated to the sustainability aspect of mining. I've worked on exploration sites, operation sites, construction sites, which are the most fun, doing fly-in, fly-outs, and stationed in different countries. Then I spent some time in the ivory tower in a corporate environment because I wanted to bring those field lessons learned to build policy and systems that would help our comrades in the field. After doing that for a while, I decided to start my company, SOOP Strategies, and I started it because I love this sector. I think the industry of mining is fascinating, that it's fun, that it can bring a lot of benefits, a lot of good impacts and other things. So I wanted to do that with a group of people that I absolutely love to work with. So we're a small but mighty team of 4 of us. We are based mostly in Canada. One splits her time, Norma, she's our stakeholder engagement specialist, splits her time between Vancouver and Mexico. And we have Avi, who's our data guru and disclosure guru. And unfortunately, he's going to try to keep calling, but we have a big storm in Toronto. So the lines are down in some parts. And then we have Allison, who's been the key to getting our sustainability over the line with just such excellence. She's a copywriter and years in the industry. With respect to reporting and disclosures, that is the bulk. I guess probably almost a little bit more than half of what SOOP Strategies does is we assemble sustainability reports for our clients. All our clients are in the mining sector. Most are mining companies. We do work with some financial companies as well and industry associations. And we work from the juniors right up to the large multinationals. I want to say something about materiality. I think that's where our sweet spot is and where we have the most fun, is working with our clients in understanding with them, collaborating with them on what their key priority topics are for sustainability in mining. And I say topics, sometimes we use issues and that has a negative connotation. So we like to stick with topics. It's a brilliant months-long process, which is really important because we do not just desktop study, but we really seek to engage the stakeholders, including the internal stakeholders. And one thing that SOOP Strategies really aims for is engaging the leadership team, because we need to get that vision and capture that vision, because that really does pull the key aspects out of the materiality process. And then we also engage the external stakeholders, so everyone from communities to investors, local government, and so forth. We then get into mapping to the disclosures, so the very many frameworks that have flourished over the last few years. And there's a slide that, if some of you know SOOP Strategies, you know our slide of the growth of disclosures over time. I should have sent that to you, Trevor. So we work with clients on mostly GRI and SASB. We try to create a custom set of disclosures because not one is a fit for all. A lot of companies are using SDGs to map their priority topics to the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's a disclosure that really helps connect the generalist with how the mining company is impacting or interacting with certain disclosures in the broader picture of global development. Mapping is pretty critical because there's different ways that disclosures can be interpreted and data there. And Abby, again, he's our expert on it. But there's a lot of ways to look at the data. So there's many tools out there, and we've talked with Trevor a lot about Lynx. We also use Excel just to look at it different ways, pivot tables, graphs, and so forth. And then we get into the writing, and the writing, I would say, is as important as the data tables because they tell the story. It's not something that can be automated. It comes from leadership vision that includes the board. It comes from what the stakeholders are seeing and feeling, their perceptions. And so that's really critical to hear and read about, particularly from an investor perspective, because in mining, there are the general top 5 risks or key issues that the investors look at. Community relations is one of them. So in a nutshell, that's a large size nutshell. That's my background, a little background of SOOP Strategies and how we look at reporting.
Sabrina, thanks so much for telling us about SOOP Strategies and kind of the rich spread of activities you're involved with to help companies. And I really like what you said about the kind of ontology of issues or challenges and not using negative words at Lynx. We just use data categories. That's what we're capturing for that. And so we could talk about that as well, and also well understood on maybe the fact that automated tools aren't going to be as useful in the future as maybe we think they are, and we could return to that. So with all that said, definitely going to turn to Ashley. Ashley is a licensed attorney and a sustainable development professional. I would argue her scope is perhaps a bit more broad as well, looking at things of supply chain as well. So it would be great to talk to you, Ashley, kind of about your background and get some information about what you're up to day to day, and kind of how you're helping the market figure out this wild, woolly world of sustainability for supply chains.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Trevor and Lynx. So glad to be here today speaking with everybody about these important topics. As Trevor mentioned earlier, I'm a licensed attorney, actually based here in Denver, Colorado. And I focused almost completely on topics related to mining, minerals, and global supply chains. My specialty really is in ESG and mineral sustainability, including those minerals that we need for the green energy transition. So when we're talking about things like cobalt, lithium, copper, nickel, that's my bread and butter. and looking at those supply chains and looking at those ESG impacts from a human rights and then an environmental lens. As far as some of my more recent collaborations, I work as one of the chief technicians for the Global Battery Alliance's Battery Passport. And what this is it was just actually unveiled at Davos at the annual World Economic Forum meeting earlier this year. And GBA is the world's largest multi-stakeholder group, currently working with the goal of establishing a sustainable, circular, and responsible battery supply chain by 2030. And as far as other work that I do with other clients, I work across multiple business functions with both private clients and private companies and also public institutions, pretty much helping them prepare for compliance with the different due diligence regulatory frameworks that are coming up when we're looking at the ESG and mineral space. So I do a lot of work in particular with clients based in the EU and the UK, looking at, for instance, the EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive that is forthcoming and the related Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive that goes hand in hand with that and what those requirements are for companies. Also work with companies who are filing here in the US under the SEC, either under the Conflict Minerals Rule. Started looking with clients as well at things such as the upcoming SEC climate-related disclosure rules and things like that. So reporting really is a big chunk of the work that we do with companies that are looking at enhancing their mineral due diligence and their supply chains. I've also worked in co-authoring some of the responsible sourcing standards that we work with, for instance, with the RMI, the Responsible Minerals Initiative. They've been updating some of their minerals related standards, and I've been helping with some of those supply chain chapters. And just really excited to be a part of this conversation today. I think that the work that Lynx does is just so important. I know that we're going to dig into the nitty gritty, but really the sustainability and ESG reporting is just, I feel like it's on the verge of exploding in relevance, especially when we look at some of the forthcoming frameworks and regulations that are coming out in both the EU and then the US and then just globally. So I think this is a super exciting conversation today and really excited to be here.
Awesome, Ashley. Thank you so much. What a rich background and expertise. And I know at Lynx, we've really benefited from our discussions to date. So I'm going to start with kind of a broad doozy for our panel here. This term ESG, right? We've gone through a number of iterations and kind of notions over the past 2 or 3 years. I mean, you've both probably been working on sustainability and some of these challenges, hurdles, or issues since maybe perhaps before it was an acronym. How have you seen it either live up to the hype, or are we on the kind of a cusp of a post-ESG world where we're actually going to be taking in more data types, perhaps to include things like security or health and safety? Just where do you see the boundaries there, and where do you see the kind of has the acronym lived up to kind of I think what many of us thought would initially happen in the sustainability profession? And I guess, Ashley, if you want to go first, perhaps, and I also just want this to be a wide, free-ranging conversation. So feel free to interrupt me or each other with other questions or comments as well.
Yeah, exactly. I actually love this question, Trevor. And I think I come with a bit of a different background when we're looking at ESG, because although I'm based here in the US, in Denver, Colorado, like I said, I work really closely with multinational, international organizations, and very much so with the European Union and UK sustainability frameworks. So I know that here at home in the US, ESG has been kind of a hot topic. There's been some debates around it. But really, from what I've seen with the global context that I work in, ESG is definitely here to stay, in my opinion. I think a lot of this conversation is very similar to kind of some conversations that we were having in the US about climate change a few years ago. In the US, we were debating whether climate change was real or not. The rest of the world kind of accepted the science behind climate change, and they were actually debating how best to mitigate some of those more severe impacts on people and the planet. ESG, I kind of see it as a parallel conversation. We're here in the US for different political reasons and whatnot. We're debating ESG, whether or not it's a live term. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, I think, has accepted ESG as a terminology. And again, they're just deciding how best to mitigate some of the big issues that we're all dealing with when it comes to the environment, impacts on people, land rights, things like that. For example, the term ESG is even being codified in European Union law, and even the some of the mining standards that I work with, ESG is actually becoming written into the new updated standards for this year. So this is not going away. And also it's interesting, you asked, are security and health and safety issues included in ESG? I believe that they are. I think that the ESG is actually super broad. It includes most of the human rights, environmental, and then governance issues that we grapple with as an industry in the mining and metal space, and also just globally in all industries across all business. I really do see it as a really broad term and not so much pigeonholed, like others may see it. I don't know if Sabrina has anything that she wants to add. I could talk about this forever, but I will not.
I also talk about this forever, Ashley, so we could talk for a long time. The term ESG, I feel like it kind of jumped into the world in 2019 when the investors, one of their many, many acronyms, and scattered it everywhere. And I'm glad they did, because those of us who've been doing this for almost 25 years, it feels like we've been pushing, I don't know, or wading through molasses. We've been doing it since it was called Sustainable Development in '86 at the Brundtland Commission. And then it sort of became sustainability, but more sustainable development. And then it became CSR, corporate social responsibility, and social responsibility, and there's responsible mining. And it made all these things. And at the end of the day, sometimes I just want to say, just do it. I don't care what you call it, just do it. And I feel like now people are starting to do it. The ESG covers the environment, the social, and the governance. And hallelujah, because when it was just sustainability or sustainable development, we talked about the three legs of the stool. Remember, it was environment, social, economic. And if you pull one, the other two fall down. So you needed all three. But really what that always needed was governance. So thank you to the investor community for pushing governance along. The economic part kind of fell off, but not out of sight of those of us who are practicing it, who are in the front lines. It's now a doer, like everybody's doing it now. And the trick is how do you communicate it? And that's where data comes in. That's really important, particularly for some of the stuff that you talked about, Ashley, with that's been codified, that's now obligatory, the regimes. I'm glad those are kind of the top-down pressures to get people to talk about it without greenwashing. It used to be a lot of greenwashing. And if you look at sustainability reports over the last 15 to 20 years, there's so many now, but at least most of them are not the glossy ESG brochures. They come along with huge data sets. So there's a lot of meat there now. It's not getting confused with PR. So
Yeah,
it's definitely, it's here to stay for sure.
Absolutely, Sabrina. Yeah, thanks for your comments. Definitely want to piggyback on something you said in terms of that molasses feeling, I think, for my next question, and also vis-a-vis the ESG glossy reports. First, putting some real data behind this, supporting claims that are being made with numbers. I think in my view, after going to, I think, 4 or 5 mining conferences already this year, I see a lot of good work that's being done, perhaps just in kind of disparate or paper-based or spreadsheet-based ways in terms of ESG data capture. And there is a feeling, from my perspective, that junior level or exploration geologist folks in the field are capturing this data already. So why do we need to kind of move on to another system? Can you, I guess, maybe both comment a little bit on why exactly these companies need to go ahead and take a bit more of an advanced or digital approach to capturing data in the field? Because again, I think what might appear to us as molasses as sustainability professionals might also be a perception that this work's already being done in an adequate way in the field, and that may be the case in certain situations. So wonder if you could eliminate that, maybe provide a little more nuance, perhaps even in the way I'm asking the question there. Sabrina, do you want to go first?
Okay, sure, I can go first. I think you talk about the exploration guys in the field, the people in the field who are first contact, so to speak. They're laying down, they're first out there, so they're already doing the S part and the E part of sustainability before the G is even thought about. And these exploration companies, they're usually 6 to 7 people. Everybody's wearing different hats, and so ESG is kind of being done in bits and bobs by a lot of them. That's why it's important to start tracking. because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So then something can fall through the cracks. And when it's time to report to your investors, and when it's time to get ready to be an attractive acquisition, you don't have your ducks in a row. And that's really part of the due diligence now, is looking at those social and environmental risks. And how is your governance? You know, there's not a lot of talk, I think, about at the startups or the early phase, the early stage companies, of do they have enough, do they have sufficient ESG in their governance? Because that is going to be adopted by the larger parent company. And it's an easier streamline in, and it makes it more of a check for the culture fit as well. You know, you don't want a rape and pillage kind of mining company if you've got this really beautiful early startup and they've made amazing relationships with the local communities, and then that kind of gets lost in the buy.
Absolutely. And if I can just piggyback off of what Sabrina has said, just with some of the clients that we're working with, at this point, the risks of not reporting on ESG and collecting this type of data, the risk is actually losing market share. Point blank. We are working with clients that are financial institutions that are then looking to invest either in mines or battery manufacturers or whatever, and they are coming to us to have us analyze the ESG data management systems, policies, and procedures of the companies that they are looking to invest in. And if these companies do not have these ESG frameworks set up and the data and things like that, then they are at risk of losing lots and lots of money in investment. It's also a market share risk when you're looking at, for instance, the fact that some of the major companies that are now really dominating global supply chains, like Apple, for instance. Apple is one of those countries that's a leader as far as like ESG reporting and data collection. And now they're requiring every other company in their supply chain, which could be tens of thousands of companies, to also be able to give them similar data and ESG points. And so we have had clients come to us and say, we want to keep our contract with Apple. Therefore, we need to learn how to set up ESG due diligence systems, and we need to learn how to start collecting this data so that we don't lose our contract with Apple. So it's becoming an even bigger and bigger concern for companies from an investment point of view, from a market share point of view, and then consumers are also wanting to know now what companies are doing. And so I really do love that the investor and consumer side of things is also another big push as far as companies getting really clear and really organized on their data. The last thing I'll say as well on this point, thinking about other platforms like the Global Battery Alliance's Battery Passport, a part of their data input is making sure that all data is standardized, auditable, and comparable that goes into their system. So again, we can't just have data that's written down, handwritten in notebooks anymore, or on random spreadsheets in 10 different computers. Data is really being called to being asked to be organized. It's got to be comparable. It's got to get to that audit level of specification in order to be accepted by all these different platforms and things like that. So again, this just really highlights the importance of management systems such as Lynx moving forward in time.
Absolutely love it. Thank you both for your insight there. To stick on the audit point, for example, and feel free to name drop or not, but can you talk about some of the audit bodies that are coming down the pike, and also maybe some of the ways, and Ashley, maybe if you could start, that companies are going to use this information to indeed be more attractive. You mentioned Apple, but also, you know, of course, we have EV batteries. We have all kinds of end-use consumers that might want to consume this information too. So if you could just hit on that point and keep elaborating a little bit, that would be really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that in my space, looking at mineral sustainability, there's a big debate on whether or not audits are even the best way to go about looking at sustainability and making positive impacts on people on the planet. Regardless of that debate, audits are definitely here to stay. For instance, RMI, the Responsible Minerals Initiative, they do a lot of audit work with companies that I work with, especially those who are involved in the 3TGs, or so-called conflict minerals. So these are companies that are in tin, tungsten, and things like that. RMI is one of the leading mineral institutes in the world, dealing with, again, probably tens of thousands of companies. And auditing is third-party audit assurance is one of the most forward-thinking ways that they're working with clients and companies, from mining companies all the way through the mineral value chain around the world. Then you think about, again, some of the regulations that are coming through the pipe, and the EU Corporate Sustainability Directive auditing is one of the factors that they're asking companies to be implementing when they're talking about supply chain due diligence, either of their own operations or of their supply chain operations. And then finally, I have companies such as battery manufacturers and others around the world who are asking mining companies themselves, especially for things like cobalt, which have a lot of inherent ESG risks, but are also very important for the green energy transition. They're asking mining companies themselves to be third-party verified, aka audited, so that they can say, okay, yes, I can source cobalt or I can source lithium or whatever from you as a mining company because you've been audited and third-party verified. So auditing is just becoming more and more, it's already a really big mainstay in the mining industry, but it's becoming even more and more important as far as those things that we talked about before, like market share and getting new customers, keeping existing customers, keeping clients happy, things like that.
Love it, Sabrina. I don't know if you want to respond to that at all, or anything you're seeing perhaps from your perspective of your clients in ways that, whether it's audit or permitting or any other aspect of kind of the data kind of mine life cycle, let us know if companies too are using it in a particular way there.
I feel like auditing, well, first from our perspective, SOOP strategies, we don't do audits, but we do help our clients prepare for audits. So we do what's called mock audits, which is a great exercise in itself of just, getting ready for the audit, but actually revealing how things are operating below the surface, which is below the surface of that sheet of data. We're finding that we're working with our clients and being strategic about their auditing. So 10 years ago, you would get the entire GRI report audited, all, 500 little data points. Now it's more strategic, where you'll look at what are your investors worried about, where are you operating, what is it a politically sensitive area? Is there like a sensitive biodiversity area, like a UN heritage site or something? So clients will often just select 3 or 4 topics, and we'll help them with that. Climate change is always at the top to do, and we'll help them go through how do you prepare for the audit. And I think one of the insights that comes forward that I can share, and I really like what we're learning, is that the process of preparing for an audit really helps the client understand better how robust their data source is. And Ashley, when you mentioned earlier, you can't just write it down in a notepad, we still see that. And it's often a surprise to corporate. We can't get that data right now because so-and-so is on rotation. We'll just log in. No, it's written in their notepad and they took it with them. So then it's a click, a light bulb goes, okay, so we got to get this more organized. And the stronger your systems are for collecting data, the more credible your data is. And opting to be transparent, opting to get a third-party audit really builds up the credibility that your company will have, not just by in front of the investors, but by reputation, by public reputation. And I think, Ashley, I just wanted to maybe ask you the question about people bringing to court, bringing up charges of greenwashing, being misled. And that's happening more often now. And maybe I'd love to hear your take on it.
That's a really interesting question. And to be completely transparent, I don't do litigation. I'm not that type of attorney. So everything that I know about the greenwashing cases is probably very similar to what you've read in the media and things like that. But the point, I think, is that these cases are coming up more and more and more. And although off the top of my head, I don't know of many that have been successful, they are getting more and more creative of coming to companies in different ways and charging greenwashing. Like I'm thinking, for instance, I think in France, they have the Due Diligence Act. And there have been French companies like Danone and others who've been accused of greenwashing and things like that, and maybe putting things that aren't quite honest or material in their sustainability reporting that they then can, that gets brought up in court later with people charging them. So I'm not sure that they've been successful yet, but I would be worried if I were companies about greenwashing, about making sure that your data sets are what you're saying about them is true. Even, for instance, I mentioned France right now having these laws that now people are suing under them. Germany has now just created its own due diligence supply chain act, and there are different charges that even a common person or somebody, an affected stakeholder, can bring against the company if they are reading the annual ESG reporting that the company is reporting under the act and it's not correct, or something in it isn't right, or there's a human rights or an environmental violation that they're saying occurred under that act. And yes, the fines are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We'll see what actually happens, whether any of them actually stick. But to your point, Sabrina, this is just really important for companies to be aware of, that this is a potential risk. And also just that, like you said, there's more focus on greenwashing now than ever before. And that's where the importance of accurate and true data comes in. Because if you can point to the true data, then it's not greenwashing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I find even our, the way we look at our clients' data, and we're not verifying it, but we're bringing them like, well, where did you get it? Because we know that those eyes are out there now that this conversation is happening, even if none of them are successful, but it's starting the conversation. And you mentioned as well, making sure that what you're writing about your data. So first having that data organized and robust and accurate and practical, and then writing about it. So I find we're really stripping back when people try and put in, we believe in blah, 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 and we are committed. Well, you can say that, but you need to follow it up with the numbers. Let's show how you're committed. So it is already coloring how we do reporting, and already our reporting is to be a strategic point in the overall sustainability strategy. Every company, whether you're in mining or not, needs to have a corporate business strategy and a business sustainability strategy. So every year when you do that sustainability reporting process, which includes the materiality, that's a real check on, okay, let's pull the data from the system, let's look at it, and how is it fitting within the overall strategy? And do we need to reassess our goals? The pandemic happened when we were reporting in 2021 for 2020 year. A lot of our clients were reassessing what we'll have to push back as a goal or reevaluate or bring in. And cybersecurity, Trevor came in pretty strong in 2021 when we started with their clients then. And I don't know where I was going with that. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, Sabrina. Great comments, both. Thank you. It definitely is one kind of reason for being at Lynx, is to try to make data a lot more granular and verifiable. Indeed, one aspect of our platform is our audit log. And so anytime any actor changes any bit of information, regardless of what it is, and clicks on something in the platform, we're going to see that in the audit log. And of course, we'll look to you both and our partners to understand, again, how to best use that data and put that forth to regulators, compliance auditors, et cetera. Okay, we'll have just a few more questions here, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, because that's usually one of the more insightful bits, first me asking questions. But Sabrina, you literally wrote the book on integrating sustainability into major projects, best practices, and tools for project teams. So, given your experience kind of with, some serious dollar figures in terms of CapEx, in terms of projects out there, we hit a little bit on the junior side and the exploration side. As folks move into the build phase, the construction phase, and then onto production, and even maybe you can talk about any kind of aspect of the mine life cycle that you want. Can you talk about technologies you've seen, or I guess strategies, but hopefully technologies too, that have kind of done what you mentioned, that allow for integrative tools in some of those projects? And maybe if you could talk about the mid-tier, the majors, that would be great too. No need to name drop, but feel free to do it if that's okay. Thanks.
So working with majors is interesting. Multiple sites, multiple phases, and I would say multiple systems. And it was rare. It is rare, I find, that there would be one system that pulls it all together. There's definitely one activity that draws from it all, and that's the sustainability activity, whether we're preparing for an audit or preparing a report. When we work with the P&C department and the procurement and contracts department, and their system is completely different from health and safety. So we have to go, it's like multiple languages, and sustainability is pulling from all of them and trying to be multilingual. In terms of systems across, we've worked with clients with multiple sites, 5 or 6, and they've used Excel. And to be honest, as consultants, we use Excel to pull in from the procurement and the supply chain system, from the HR system, from the health and safety. The problem there is we are hyper vigilant of human error, including our own. So it's drawing it in and typing it in, and you can go batty looking at the spreadsheets, but it seems to be the only thing of a multinational that will bring it all together. In terms of phase of operation, there isn't too much of a difference, I would say, except in maybe construction, where construction is chaos. They're like synonyms, right? Like it's organized chaos, and I find data is the same, and things are moving really fast. An environment, for example, is moving really, really fast. Social is you can barely get hold of the team because it's such a big and noisy and dusty activity, and the team is out there. So that's always a challenge to get time with departments and pull data. And sometimes, Trevor, we just have to sit beside them at the desk to get the data going. It's an old industry, and some of it's still archaic, and some of it's like mind-blown high tech.
Absolutely. Ashley, I don't know if you want to respond to that at all, perhaps. Just any tools or technologies you're seeing out there that could provide more of an integrated kind of strategy for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't give insights on actual tools and techs. That's definitely your wheelhouse, Trevor and Sabrina. But what I will say is just underscoring the fact that whether we're talking about the different frameworks or what investors want to see or what have you, getting money in from finance, what we're seeing again is like going back to the joke of just like writing down the data in the notebook. Again, it served its time, it's worked for a certain amount of time, but now you're even seeing requirements that data is stored in a database, stored with some kind of record keeping methodology, and stored for a certain amount of time. Like for instance, 7 years is a really typical one that you see. So it's becoming more and more almost, again, I don't want to keep saying it's like a legal issue or a compliance issue, but at some point it's like you actually are going to need to invest in a database platform in order to even meet the basic compliance requirements of some of these laws that we see coming down, either in the US or from the EU or what have you. So companies really should be thinking about their record keeping and systems management, how long they're storing data, how easy that data is to access, whether or not they can prove and verify the data, whether that data itself is auditable. All those things should be top of mind.
Fantastic. Yeah, really excellent insight, Ashley and Sabrina. Thanks so much. I think we'll move on to the Q&A kind of section of the Lunch and Learn, which is always great. If anybody has any questions, we've covered a lot of ground, no pun intended, but we're talking about different geographies, different parts of the mine life cycle, and then also different methodologies, what's appropriate for that particular piece of the mine life cycle, that particular phase, and how to report. And then we also touched on audits as well. So are there any questions from the audience? We would love that. And again, we have 2 experts here, so please don't hold back or be shy. I'm sure we could tackle just about anything. I'll wait a few moments. Feel free to raise your hand. I can unmute you. And as well, you could, I believe, type some Q&A in the Q&A function by creating the create post button. Looks like Gabriella has raised her hand. Would love to hear her question. And I think you can unmute yourself now, Gabriella, as well. Sorry, I can't do that on my side. Not able to unmute. Also, you could type your question in the Q&A with the Q&A button as well. Unsure if that will work for you. Okay, maybe we'll try to figure that out as we go along. Does anybody else have a question? I do see that you're able to unmute yourself, Gabrielle, but I'm sorry if that's not the case. Now perhaps try it. I think I may have allowed for the mic as well. Someone else is holding up a question.
It's blurry.
It's blurry
It's
too.
blurry.
Unmute, can't unmute. It says
Now I
can't.
can. Now I can.
Okay, excellent.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to know about, you know that now Mexico signed an agreement with the Mining Chamber of Commerce, I think, about towards sustainable mining.
Hmm.
And I want your opinion about this. I'm not very familiar with the TSM, and I want to know how it works and how it works for the new arrivals.
Oh,
Because Mexico just
Hmm.
signed an agreement.
yeah.
So what would be the future of the mining industry in Mexico after signing the TSM?
So I can speak to a certain point because we've done TSM audits for clients in the past, and now we help clients prepare for TSM audits. The protocols under TSM are I think, excellent in terms of assessing where you are in your level of development for that protocol. For example, for climate change and greenhouse gas and energy. It starts at the very basic of, do you have a policy? And does it mention climate change? And it goes all the way up to what an advanced organization or what an organization who is advanced in their development for managing climate change would have in terms of their systems and policies and programs. So that's just sort of a description, I think, in a nutshell, for those who don't know about TSM or much about TSM. There's, I think, almost 10 protocols now. It started in Canada, and now other countries are coming on. In terms of being new to the TSM program, I don't know what MAC's process is. MAC is the Mining Association of Canada. And Ben Chalmers is the fellow running the TSM program there, and he's excellent. I think the program is excellent for a company even just starting out on their sustainability journey, because going through the steps of questions, even if you're not preparing for or doing an audit, but just using them as a worksheet, can give you an idea of where you are and where you should be to score for the highest level, which I think is AAA performance. I think this, if I recall, the process is to be audited. If you're a member of MAC here in Canada, if you're a member of MAC, you go up for audit every 3 years, and depending on your level of achievement, you can be exempt from the next year. And that can apply to the protocols individually, I believe. But I think in summation, it's a qualitative system. It's not for data. And so to get your ducks in a row, it's a great system. It does not measure how strongly you adhere to your systems. So you can have a community relations management system this thick, but I don't believe TSM, the auditor, would check if you're actually doing it. And now I think for community relations, the auditor can go out and talk to your community stakeholders. So that's one aspect. I think that's getting stronger now. But yeah, that's my experience with TSM.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as TSM, like Sabrina mentioned, it really did start off in Canada. And now I think there are maybe 8 other countries outside of Mexico. I didn't realize that Mexico just signed it. That's great. I know that also they are working in Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Botswana, Finland, Colombia, Norway, and the Philippines. So kind of an interesting geographic mix. I know that as far as what TSM does really well, tailings management is kind of what they're known for. They have a really robust tailings management and other type of like environmental protocol. They also have some other protocols that are looking at some more human rights and social issues, like they have a voluntary child labor and forced labor standard that you can look at. They're looking at health and safety, biodiversity conservation management, climate change, crisis management. Indigenous and community relationships is another big one, again, given its background in Canada. So that might be relevant to some places in Mexico. But yes, as far as how impactful TSM is, I'm sure that Sabrina has more experience in that, actually knowing some of the big players within TSM. I know that for me, from a consulting and analyzation point, I would like more transparency. You have annual reports as part of your TSM membership, but I believe that the report itself is confidential. And then what's actually published online is some graphics and maybe a 1 to 2 page overview. And so there isn't that complete transparency that we like to see, like an annual sustainability report that might be 20 to 50 to 100 pages long, right? That's not necessarily what you're getting through TSM, but you could get that through other platforms, depending on what else the mining company is involved in.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I will see further how things go in Mexico with the mining chamber, the Mexican mining chamber that signed the agreement with MAC in Canada. So I think it's very good for Mexico. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge, but as you know, like 68% of the mining investment in Mexico is Canadian. So they are accustomed to this kind of audits and international standards. It's great when Canadians. I used to work for the Canadian Embassy and working in the mining industry before moving to the US, and around 2000 Canadians began to arrive to Mexico, and the mining industry changed.
Amazing.
Of the international standards, the way they work, and it's very good, I think, for the country and for the companies.
That's great. Yeah, great question. It is great to hear. I think as we watch some of these standards grow teeth, so to speak, in other markets, that can only be good for kind of increasing the harmonization and communication between standards and geographies. So I should also mention Gabriela is a mining consultant too, and is a past Lunch and Learn speaker as well. And so always look forward to hearing what's happening in the Mexican market from her. Other questions at this point? I think, we have probably about 9 minutes left. If anybody else has any questions, please raise your hand or type them in the Q&A. We'll wait a few moments. Covered a lot of ground. If there's anything anybody thinks of after the fact, question that pops into your mind, feel free to email either myself, Trevor@lynxglobalintelligence.com, or perhaps I'm not going out on a limb here, but contact Sabrina or Ashley on LinkedIn. I think they're usually pretty happy to just let folks know what's going on. Looks like we have a question from Bayer.
Hello, Sabrina, nice to see you. Ashley, nice to meet you. I have a question about sustainability in terms of increasing the efficiency of existing systems, because that sees to be something I usually call low-hanging fruit, because the things are there, you just need to improve on it. But in a bigger scheme of things, or the even in terms of greenwashing, these people seem to leave that out and go for the more sexier, if you will, CO2 emission reduction and the sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can jump in super quickly on the first bit and just say, that's one reason Lynx exists and how we're supporting our current clients. And, trying to be a little bit more verifiable and granular in data collection, kind of versus that singular line item, or maybe just focusing on carbon and doing a glossy on that. So that's just, if you want to learn more about kind of specifically how Lynx is doing that, again, I'm at Trevor@lynxglobalintelligence.com or info@lynxglobalintelligence.com. But would open it up to the panel. This will probably be our final question, because I'm sure we'll take a few minutes talking about that. But yeah, just a response to the question, if you both don't mind.
Absolutely. Would you like to go first, Sabrina, or do you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Yes. So this is actually a really good question, Bayer, because often, when companies are trying to bring sustainability or ESG or whatever you want to call it and integrate it into their systems, cost and efficiency are often top of mind, especially depending on how large the company is, how much annual economic turnover it has, all those things. And so when we're working with clients that are at the earlier stages of their ESG or sustainability journey, something that we always try to do is see what risk management systems do you already have in place, either financial risk management, PR risk management, reputational risk management, something, and then how do we integrate environmental and human rights due diligence into what already exists? So many companies think, oh no, I don't have anything. I'm not doing anything about human rights, or I don't know about the environment, but they'd be surprised to know, oh no, we do have a monthly risk management meeting that we have with our board where we go over any risks to the finances of the company or the supply chain or something else. Okay, great. How do we integrate human rights and environmental risk management as well into that existing system? Or, oh, we're already reporting to our investors on these different data points. Okay, great. How do you add the human rights, the ESG, the environmental data points to what you're already reporting? So that's at least one strategy that we try to use, looking at what the company already has that exists and that's efficient and already working, and then integrating human rights into that instead of siloing human rights on its own kind of policies and procedures that aren't connected to the rest of the company. And that would probably cost more and not be as efficient to deal with. So I hope that makes sense and just gave a little bit of insight into that.
Absolutely. Sabrina, do you have maybe a response to that at all?
Yeah, sure. First, hi, Bayer. It's been years, so it's nice to see you. I think I saw you in person before the pandemic at a CIM conference. In terms of the integration of what sustainability does to bring, I think what it does is bring silos together. It points out where silos are cross-sectional. And Avi and I were having this conversation the other day, going through a reporting with a client, and he mentioned, and it's not the first time he's mentioned it, that data is sometimes calculated differently between departments. So, for example, we have diversity, equity, inclusion, which is a really big topic, and it's cross-sectional. It's not really just human resources. There's local procurement, local procurement, local employment, the supply chain. Where do you want to count your DEI? So just calculating things like that, and I think that's where a common system or a system of sustainability data could resolve that, perhaps at least bring it forward. So as consultants, when we come in as outsiders and we kind of peel back the layers on the company's performance and programs from an ESG perspective, we get a really, really unique opportunity to have this multi-perspective view of what everyone's doing, talking different languages, but the same topic. And it tends to happen quite a lot.
Fantastic. Great notes on kind of integrating, aggregating data so we can do all kinds of things in terms of best practices at the mine site. So with that, I don't think we have any other questions unless, Bayer, your hand is still up, but I think that perhaps covered it. Let me know if not. This has been the Lynx Lunch and Learn April version. Thank you so much to both Sabrina and Ashley for sharing your insight. I have no doubt we could probably go for another half an hour on many of these topics. But again, if questions pop up, please do let me know either at Trevor or info@lynxglobalintelligence.com. We'll get those answered, whether that's on the consulting advisory side, the legal side, or of course, the technology side, which we are looking forward to supporting both our current clients in the market and some of these data goals too, just along the lines of what our panelists were saying today. So again, any more questions, feel free to let us know. We will follow up with all the attendees and everybody that signed up with a recording of the event. And we will see you for next month's Lunch and Learn. Keep an eye on your mailbox for that newsletter that'll come out with that date and who our guests and awesome panelists will be then. So thank you very much, both Sabrina and Ashley. Super informative. I learned a lot. I think our audience did too. And we hope everybody has a great rest of your week.
Trevor, thank you. Ashley, so
Thanks,
nice to meet you.
everybody.
I'll
as
connect
well,
with you on
Sabrina.
LinkedIn.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it.
All
Bye,
right, take
everybody.
care.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.